Hey there everybody, TBA here. How are all you awesome people doing? Welcome to day 8 of the 12 Days of Freezemas. I know I'm a bit behind, but bear with me. So today, I'm not going to bring you 8 maids of milking. Thank goodness I don't know where I would have stored them anyways, but I'm going to do something a little different than what we've been doing up to this point. Taking a bit of a break from deep freeze simply because A, some people were feeling it was getting a bit stale, B, I was feeling it was getting a bit stale. No, honestly, I just wanted to do this. I just wanted to show you guys this. So, as you may have guessed by the title of the video, maybe not, depending on what I titled it. What are you going to title it, Shane? But basically, I'm going to teach you guys, because, you know, Pokemon Sun and Moon just came out. A lot of people are going to want some, like, Pokemon plushies for Christmas, stuff like that. This should only take a few hours, okay, to make this thing. I'm going to teach you guys how to make a Mimikyu plushie. Ta-da! Yeah, that's not the plushie, that's just what Mimikyu looks like. But anyways, I'm going to show you guys how to do that. I'm not a professional, so, I mean, if there are any better tips or better videos that you find, you know, good on you. Use whichever one you prefer. But this one, I can guarantee you will only take a few hours because I never do any kind of project that takes more than a few hours, because if I do, I'll leave it for a day and then never come back to it. So, without further ado, this is how you make a Mimikyu plushie. Now I know what some of you are thinking. What? TBA is sewing? What is this nonsense? That's for girls. Well, let me tell you, let me be the first to tell you that is a myth, good sir and or ma'am. Sewing does not require any Sewing does not require you to be male, female, horse, fish, anything. Isn't that right? Where are you? Dang it, there goes my paper. Squid, octopus, person, thing. Isn't that right, Christmas Cthulhu? See? Even they agree. Sorry. Right, so the very first thing you're probably going to want to do is, once you've got all your fabrics together, all the colors you want, you know, like pale yellow, black, red, brown, for the stick thing. What a lot of people who sew, that are like big sewing enthusiasts, or, you know, people who just want really precise cutouts, will do is they might take some chalk and draw out, any type of chalk will do, but there's sewer's chalk, I think, and you know, you can get that at any kind of Fabricland or anything like that, any sort of maybe hobby store. But what you're going to do is cut out, or maybe even map out, what shape you're going to want. And so I'm starting here with the bottom part, the black part of Mimikyu, which is actually like his real skin and whatever. I'm going to start with that, and I'm doing this a little bit differently than most people might, but if you like my style, good on you. Yeah, so starting with this, the first thing you're going to want to do is cut out the piece you want. You know, sometimes it's easier to just cut off an entire piece like that. It's easier to work with. I'm not so professional, so I just kind of cut like this. Very nice. You may have noticed that my Mimikyu shape is sort of not round. Saying, what the heck, TBA, isn't Mimikyu round? Yeah, well, he is, but you see, I botched that cut there, and that's fine, because that can be fixed later. Just know that mine is going to be slightly less round than yours will be. What you want is more of this shape, more rounded. Alright, we're just gonna work with this. Or, you know, a slightly easier way of doing this might be to just cut out a giant circle and then cut out the little thingies, because clearly I wasn't thinking ahead here. I thought ahead, just in all the wrong places. So, here we go again. Now, I guarantee you, unless you've got some kind of special circle cut tool, which probably exists, but I don't have, your circle is not going to be perfect. And that's fine, because, you know, Mimikyu, he's crafty, but he's not maybe so great with the scissors. So, wait, no, this is his skin. Never mind, ignore that. But anyways, it's fine because, you know, we're going to cut out things like this out of it. So it's all good. A lot of people say, oh, I can't sew. My hands aren't steady enough for that kind of thing. Well, look at my hands, guys. Don't worry, you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. Alright, so there you go. That's a little bit better. You know, obviously you can kind of pretty it up in some areas if you so choose. If yours is maybe not like quite so perfect as mine. Just kidding. But yeah, so like that, and there you have it. So that's gonna be our base. Okay, so next thing we're gonna do here is cut out a slightly bigger circle than the, you know, jaggedy thingy that we cut out before. And that's gonna be, we're making a sort of a dome so that, here I'll show you, that's like kind of what his body looks like, and it's going to give some support for the rest of the plushie and is going to just give him more shape, you know. So a slightly bigger circle than this so that it has the room to go up and still be sewn to this area. It doesn't matter if there's any kind of stitching here because you're not going to see it. It'll be underneath the yellow part. So cut out a slightly larger circle without any jaggedy thingies because you want it to be smooth. Once again, it does not have to be perfect. See, look how great I am at cutting out circles. Isn't that incredible? But as long as it's slightly larger, see, that'll do. Because it's slightly larger than the majority of the, you know, this thing. So, yes, I'm just gonna, you know, even that up a little bit. Alright, so, now that you got your circle all fancy and whatever, and your tiny, whatever this is, we're gonna finally start the actual sewing part. Okay, so, you know, thread the needle and whatnot. You got some black thread, regular needle. What I usually do, so it's extra strong, is I take the thread and pull it back to the length that I need of whatever I'm going to be using. For in this case, we're going to be sewing this essentially around the perimeter of this. So I'm going to need enough thread to be able to go around this way, and then also enough to go all the way back around, because it's just stronger that way. So, you know, just kind of eyeball it, how much thread you'll need. And what you're going to do with this double thread here, going to match it up at the end here. This is kind of a tricky part. I'd say you might want to get an adult to do this, but technically speaking, I'm an adult, and I have trouble with it. So, anyway, so what you got to do, you're holding these two down here, and these two up here, right? Like this, you got an X. What you're gonna do is you're gonna make a knot like that, alright? And then pull. Now, if you let go right now, it's just gonna, I won't do it because I don't feel like doing it all over again. But if you let go right now, it'll go away and then you'll have to do it again. So, at this point, once you got it like that, it's like tying shoes, right? You know, do it again, one more knot. Sorry if that's kind of hard to see. So another knot, so that it won't come undone as easily. Now I do it like 3 to 4 more times because I don't trust my knots. So I'm just going to do that real quick. And so the reason that you do it like that, instead of just pulling the knot to the very end of the needle here, is so that as you're sewing, by the way, you should, you know, pull it tight so that it's even now. So while you're sewing, when you get to the end of each time you pull through, that will stay there. It won't go through anymore, or at least it shouldn't if your knots are big enough. Mine often are not, pardon the pun. So sometimes I even do this. Just tie it around it itself. Like so. Just to know that the knot's big enough. right? And again, I do that a couple times because I really don't trust myself. You'll be getting the question at some point, is this guy qualified to be teaching anything? Probably not, but we're going to go with it anyways. Okay, so now we've got that. We got our sun looking black thing, whatever the frick you want to call it. And we're going to sew this to that, alright? Now, not just straight like this, because then you won't have any room and it'll look weird, it'll come out the bottom, it's not right. Okay, so what we're going to do is, let's start from the top because it'll get covered. And then, what I mean it will get covered is this little stringy part here that sticks off of the knot will get hidden by the yellow part. I mean, yes, you can cut it, but sometimes I fear it harms the integrity of the knot. But anyway, so we're just gonna start it like this. Sorry if it's hard to see any of this because black on black here, but I try. Okay, so what we're gonna do right here is we're just gonna go around the outside, making sure that it doesn't, just go flat. Basically what we want by the end of this is for this to be able to go like this, to be standing up, sort of. So I'm just gonna go do that. Actually, quickly, I'll show you this on a lighter piece of fabric later because this is kind of ridiculous to be showing you it now. But basically, the way I sew is, see, I've got the knot there. Then you come up, come up from under, there we go. Okay, come up from underneath, about that far apart from the knot, each time. Because what you don't want is stitches that are too big, and then you also don't want stitches that are too small, because if they're too big, the stuffing will come out, and in this case, we're going to be using beanbag stuffing, give it a little bit more weight, and you can buy this at any sewing place, usually, the little plastic beads. So we don't want those falling out, especially not for a child. That's a choking hazard. And you don't want them too small either, basically for the same reason, also because it uses way more thread, and you don't want that. And thread is not always cheap, so we want to keep our mistakes to a minimum. Something to note, just while it's on my mind here, for beginner sewers, is when you are sewing, if you're sewing the way I'm sewing like this, say my hand is the fabric, you go on in and out like this, right? Like this. Not, say if this was the fabric, not in and around like this. Because although that is a type of sewing, and some people like the way that looks, which is perfectly fine if you do, but in this case, it will just pull all of these nice little tendril or little fingery thingies that we've got here. It'll just pull them in, and they'll be pointless, and then it'll basically be ruined, and you'll have to re-sew it, which is not fun. So yes, just a beginner's note for you beginners. And good on you for trying in the first place. Sometimes sewing is a very daunting task, especially with something like a plushie. Ah, see, here is a perfect example of me doing exactly what I just told you not to do. Alright, so, as you can see, I've accidentally gone in a circle around the fabric. That occasionally happens when you confuse yourself, or you even forget which way you stitched in the first place. So, the easiest way to fix this problem, because this is fixable, especially at this point, when you have not pulled it too tight yet. If you have pulled it too tight, do not fret, you just have to pick it out with either end of the needle. So, you very delicately place the needle down, like so, grab the fabric and the thread, and just pull backwards from where you just sewed into. Right, so this is the easiest way I've found. Now match the end of the needle with the hole that you sewed. It's kind of tricky, but try as best as you can while still, gently pulling. And although this sort of ruins the fabric slightly, you should be able to pull it out like that. So yes, do not fret if you should happen to actually sew in a circle like that, because as you just saw, it can be fixed. Now, as I was saying about going around the perimeter, this thing, what I meant was basically it's edge to this part, edge to whatever part is just inside of the tendril thingies. because you don't want this like that, you know? So match it up like that. Sorry if I wasn't clear enough on that before. Also, another note, you do want to make sure you are pulling your thread tightly through as you're sewing, like so. Pardon the pun. You do want to pull it taut, but not, you know, too tight, because it will pull at the rest of it. As you can see, mine is slightly pulled. This is okay because it is a circle, and sewing, I mean, this is a circle, and sewing round things is sometimes annoying because they can occasionally, if they're not quite the right size or whatever, they'll pull in a little bit, which is fine, because the person I'm giving this to is not expecting perfection, by no means. And see this part here, the edge naturally comes too far over the tentacly part, whether that's because I've cut too far in on the tentacles, sorry if you can't see a thing, whether it's because I come too far in here, or whether it's because that is like out like that. It's fine, I can either cut that off or fold it underneath, and I think I'll just fold it underneath. If you have a pin to pin there, that's great. I don't, wait, actually I do, hold on a second. You can pin carefully, obviously you don't want to pin your finger. You can just pin the piece of fabric there. And so when you get to that point, you'll just take out the pins, continue sewing, and onwards. Alright, so I've just gotten around to about, show you here. That's the space. Here's where I started, and here's where I am now. Shush! As you can see, there's a fair bit of fabric in between here, right? Now, truth be told, this is a bit of an experimental pattern, as in I've never done it before. Ha 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 ha. How many people clicked away just now because they're like, oh, this guy doesn't have any idea what he's doing. Alright, but basically this can be fixed. Either A, I can do this, pick it up by the middle of about the top of where it will be stuffed to, and do this, and just sew it like that. Not completely yet, because it does still need to have beans stuffed into it. Or I can see about cutting here, just to the middle, which is probably what I should have done in the first place and had like some sort of Pac-Man shape instead of a circle. This could also have been done in like 4 separate pieces, but this is, I thought this would be easier. So far it is. I mean, in my opinion at least. But anyways, this seems to be easier for me. So yeah, I think I'll try cutting it. And that way, the fold will not stop it from getting stuffed there. I mean, I guess it shouldn't anyways, but I don't know. I'm going to cut it anyways, so. Here we go. If this fails, don't do it. What you're going to want to do next here is fill up this hole with les beans, or stuffing, depending on what you can use, you know, this kind of stuffing, or anything that you would like to stuff the base of your Mimikyu with. Like I said, I'm doing it this way because I want it to have a sort of a bean bag type of thing going on here, and have some weight to it so you can actually stand up. So I'm using these poly pellets. So yeah, I'm gonna just dump those into there real quick, and I'll sew that up, and then we can continue. These are non-toxic, by the way, so it's okay for me to touch them. I think they're just like little plastic pellets. Alright, so that took surprisingly more than was expected. As you can see, it's sort of starting to take shape here. I think what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna sew up along here. And then I think I'll cut it, actually. Cut these flappy thingies, because, I mean, they're not particularly necessary. And then I think I'll just fill in the rest of the beanbags, because it's not quite as full as I'd like it to be, but almost there. So yes, I'm just going to sew this part up right along, not following the sides of the fabric, but just straight along like this. So that way it's together, but I don't have to have those flaps. Alright, I'm just gonna do a little bit more stuffing and then I will sew it up. Alright guys, so at this point, as you can see, I've just kind of, I've finished stuffing it. I actually fill in a little bit at the top here with just regular cotton stuffing because I wanted to have this sort of cone shape at the top here. So just for a bit of the shaping, I put in some of that. And I finished sewing up here. And I'm just going to cut this off. Being very careful to not cut any of the thread that I have put throughout this fabric. So that's okay, you can get a little bit closer if you really want to. What I'm going to do, just real quick, is actually sew alongside down here again. And I think I'll actually sew in a circular motion. I know I said not to do this, but in this case, it's actually possibly helpful for keeping the beads or the little plastic pellets inside. So, just along here. Alright, so some of you may notice that what I'm doing right now, by going back down along the stitching that I've already done, I'm not actually going over top of any of the stitching, or at least very little. I'm actually going in between all the places where there isn't stitching. So sort of matching up dot to dot, if that makes sense. Just so that fills in everywhere there isn't stitching and there's not going to be any beads coming out through there. In case any of you guys were wondering, yes, this is my first time working with these pellets. And surprisingly with very little mess. So if I can manage it, you guys definitely can. Alright, so now I'm going to do the loops, like I said I was going to. This is how you would go about doing that kind of sewing, should you so choose to do it. It's good to have as many different stitchings on this one area as possible, because we definitely do not want it bursting with the beads at any point in time. Ever in the life of this stuffy, of this Mimikyu. Sorry, can you guys tell who's my favorite Pokemon? You may notice I'm also being very careful as to keep the thread above the previous one. This is because you want it to actually go in order upwards along the fabric and not just kind of sit in one area, because it will continuously loop down to one area if you let it. So, in fact, you can actually make it do that. There are some times when you want that to happen, that's basically what I'm saying. This is not one of them. And as you can see, with what I'm doing here, it's actually kind of bringing in the flappy bit, and it's actually kind of making it look better, or nicer, which doesn't, like I said, doesn't particularly matter, because this is all going to be underneath the yellow part, but, you know, just for your own sanity. It's kind of nice. Oops. See, one of the threads just went straight along the last one. This is fine. I'll just go over again. Normally you could, you know, just pick it out until it did go along the right way, but I mean, we're here, so. So now you've got this sort of basic sunflowery shape thing that's kind of like a Hershey's Kiss in a way, and yeah. What we're gonna do is we're gonna tie this. We're gonna cut and tie this part here, and then I'm not gonna show it, but we're gonna sew around the outside again, the same way as before, similar to what I just did here, but without the circular motion, because again, that will pull in these if we did it that way. Actually, I'm just thinking here for a moment. There is a way we could do the round ones, which might make me feel a little bit safer. This is using a lot of thread, obviously, but in this case, having this being the first time and only time I've ever used these, I'm going to take every precaution to make sure that they don't fall out at any point in time. So I will cut and tie this, and then I'll go around this again the same way as before, going between the stitches that I've done already, and then I will show you guys how to do it this way if you want. If you're just as untrusting of your own stitches as I am of mine. So now that we've just cut this, before I move on, I'm just gonna say, yeah, you tie it the same way as before basically, except you don't have to worry about the second loop. You just can tie, you can just tie a knot either this way, and I usually do 3 or 4, just again to be safe. So 4, and you can also do it this way, around your finger, even if you have stubby fingers like mine. And make sure that the knot goes to the bottom of the string, because it's no point in having a knot up here, right? And again, I do them like 3 or 4 times. See what I mean? There's no point in having a knot up there like that. See? So, little trick to avoid that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you're more likely to get a knot down there if you tie it like this and just kind of let it slide into place like that. Ta-da! Okay. And that's how you basically how you tie off an end thing there. Sorry I don't have technical terms for all these things. I've been sewing about, oh, I can't remember how long. Years and years, but I've never been taught any technical terms. And yeah, you can leave a little bit like that. I tend to do it like that because, again, I fear for the structural integrity of the knot otherwise. Here's this part, and I'm just gonna sew around the outside in between the stitches, and then I'll show you the way to do it so you're not pulling in these. All you gotta do is you go in, like in here, in this part, you know, as close as you can get to the edge of the circle. Here, I'll just do one. Basically, you go in there, you go down, like this, right, and then you come back up through the circle side. I'm gonna go on the other side of the thread that's already there, the stitch that's already there, because I don't wanna, it'll pull it more if I go on the side closest to me. Get off of the scissors. And then you just, you know, continue that, going like that, just along in here as close to the circle part of the fabric, like as close to the edge here as possible, without, because like you wouldn't want to start over here, because as soon as you pull this, it will drag that part of the fabric in, so it would look like that, and you don't want that. So, I mean, I suppose I could go all the way around like this, just as close close here as possible just to be safe. Let me just try one more and see what it looks like, because if it pulls too much, I don't want to. Yeah, see, that pulls quite a bit. So I like the way it looks right now. I'm just gonna actually pull out that last stitch I did, because you know, if I pull it any tighter, it will pull in the fabric, and I don't want that. So I'm just gonna take this out. Yeah. Alright, so it's come to the part of the video where you'll be cutting out the next part of is, you know, the rest of him. So like the body, right? So my original thoughts were I was just gonna use this scrap that I had here lying around because I happen to have a piece that somewhat matched it. Unfortunately, once I saw the proportion of his body to his head, you might be able to notice that his head is ever so slightly larger. So, with this size of the body, because this would be the bottom part of him, right? It would look like this. I can't make the head big enough and cut out the right shapes up here and have it, you know, slightly bigger and everything with this piece of fabric. So I've decided to, you know, use that one for a different project and completely take out a new thing of fabric. Yes, I'm just going to draw, in this case I am going to draw the shape of his body because it's a little bit more oddly shaped than just a lump. What you're going to want to keep in mind while you're drawing this is this fabric, you're going to have two sides to it, first of all. Either you can fold it over on itself, so that the two sides, you know, match up, and then you would draw it up. And what you want to keep in mind is that you want it to be just slightly bigger than what you want the finished product to look like. And I'll explain that more later. Also, because I'm going to be using just a marker to draw mine, I will be drawing it even bigger so that when I cut it out, the marker will be outside of where I cut, but I'll still have the same shape. So, yeah. Alright, so I don't know if it will show up on the camera, but I've gone over with actually a yellow marker that I managed to find. I thought I was going to have to use the black one, but I've gone around it, and it's going to smell like lemons because, yay, scented markers. And hopefully it won't smell like lemons because it'll be cut out a little bit smaller than that. As you can see here, you know, you might want to use the body just as measurement for the head, you know, comparison, because the head is slightly larger than the body. And so normally I would just be using the very edge of the fabric here for the bottom part, but because I didn't trust myself with this part and making sure that I would line up everything properly, I decided to move it up slightly. You probably won't have to if you have brand new fabric, because as you can see I've used this for many projects. So I think I'll actually cut this in two parts because I don't trust this fabric or myself to have it follow through the other side perfectly. So I'm just gonna cut out this first shape and then match it up and cut out the second one. Sorry if it's a little bit hard to see on here, but there's side one. I'm gonna just put it down over here and then trace it and then cut that out. So that's both parts now, as you may be able to see there. Now don't be alarmed if not everything matches up perfectly, because unless you're like amazing at cutting, it's probably not going to, which is perfectly fine. That's part of why we cut it bigger than we wanted the finished product to be, because it's more or less going to be your stitching that actually determines how well everything matches up and how well shaped everything is. So say like, yes, this is cut like this, but if I were to sew it like this, when we turn this inside out, because it's going to get turned inside out, it would just be flat, and all this would be on the inside of the thing, the finished thing. You may have noticed on mine, I left this part that would normally be the black part of his ears, I cut it out with just the yellow. I have a reason for that. My reason is because I'm actually going to either sew on, I might speed sew on the black part. I'll probably just sew it on because I don't trust this stuff a whole lot. It's worked for repairs. I haven't had a problem with it yet. It worked excellently. Nothing bad has happened with it. I just prefer needle and thread. So what I'm going to do though, going to cut out the black parts. I'll come back and then we can just sew it up all at once. So I can't find any yellow thread right now, but what I'm going to do till then is I'm going to sew up above the yellow part of the ears because I don't want any black thread touching the yellow part. So I'm just going to sew up this part of both ears. And actually I'm going to make sure to leave some thread sticking out so that I can tie it up with the yellow thread. And then that way it won't just kind of fall off. I'm also going to eventually, when I get some yellow thread, I'm going to sew along here, matching each side of the fabric to the other, and not straight through all 4 pieces of fabric, because we want to be able to stuff that when we turn it inside out. So it's basically going to be like a little sock. Now we are going to get some yellow thread because black thread does not work well on yellow fabric. Alright, so I found some yellow thread. I'll start here just because it's the beginning of the ear. I'll come up here, and this is going to be over top of this. Like this will be inside of this little socky type thing here. Just like so. So it's going to be a little bit farther down than that, but basically I'm going to come up along here, stop at about here because that's where the yellow stops, right? And I don't want any yellow going into the black because it just doesn't look right, right? So it's going to come up to there where the yellow stops. Then I'm going to sort of separate them on the inside, the 2 yellow halves, so that I don't accidentally sew through both halves because I don't want it to be closed. I just want this to be secured onto there. So I'll come across there, go back around, and then because it's back over here and I can't get over there just by jumping like that or else it will pinch like this, I'll have to go over it again, and then back down here, around, and then I will do the same with this one. And this one is not sewn with the black yet, so I'll also do that. Alright, it's a bit late in the video to be mentioning this, but as you're working with long pieces of thread, you may run into this at some point. These knots, basically, they happen either because of just the length of the thread itself tangling back on itself, or because the 2 threads are not even on the needle, which is an easy fix, but you almost are guaranteed to run into this at some point. I had run into it earlier on the black thread. So the first thing you're going to want to do to fix this, because you do want to fix this, because you can't just pull that through the fabric. It will put a giant hole there and then it will mess up the stitch and it will just not be good. So as you can possibly see here, this side is further out than this side. What you want to do, so it's not loose anymore, is you want to figure out which side exactly is the loose one and pull it so that it's not loose anymore. Oh boy. That was very confusing. Okay, there. Okay, so as you can see, this knot is actually resolving itself just by me pulling that. Sometimes it does just fix itself. Sometimes you gotta get your needle and you're just gonna pick at the tightest looking area of the knot, basically. Try and pull that out. If it doesn't work in that spot, you can pick a different area of the knot. It's just you want to be careful not to accidentally tighten the knot. An alright way to try and prevent these would be, obviously you want the thread to be even on the needle. Is the first thing that's going to help you to not get these knots. And the second thing you can do is, as you're pulling each stitch through, you can just kind of have your fingers sort of looped around the thread like this, so that when you pull through, it untangles. Oh, sorry. That's the wrong side. When you pull through, it untangles as you pull it through. It untangles at your hand before it gets to here. Once it gets to here, that's when it'll turn into a knot. And I hope that was helpful. Alright, so here we are at the part where I'm gonna sew this outside half to this piece of fabric. Not this one, and then this side to this side. Alright, so now we're ready to sew over this part here. And now that it's actually attached to the thing, I have less trouble doing it. So I can just put my finger behind here. Obviously be careful not to stab yourself. You might want to use a thimble or whatever. Making sure that those two pieces of fabric are separated. Go over it, same kind of stitching we've been doing this whole time. You just obviously want to be careful to A, not stab yourself, like in my how to make a costumes video. And we are not making a costume today, we're only making stuffies, so no stabbing of the hand required. And then also, of course, to not go into the other fabric. So yeah, you can just go back in. Again, be careful not to sew over any folds, because you don't want any folds in the finished product. Hope you guys can see this alright. Ow. Again, this is a part where you want to be very careful to not do the circular stitch thing, because this will mess up. Alright, so like I said, gonna double stitch back to here, and then I'll do the other side. There we go. So now that both sides are sewn separately to this fabric, blah 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 blah, we can now sew up and back down the side. Again, also going to tie these two pieces of string to, you know, this one once I get up to that point, and then bring it back down, and then I'll just sew along here and then do this one. Now see, sometimes on this part you may find that it's a bit thick, a bit tough to get through the fabric, just because there are 4 layers of fabric that you're going through here. Do not fret. What you can do if you're having trouble is either use a thimble, try to use a metal one because the plastic ones will probably get a hole in it if you try to push too hard on the back of the needle. But yeah, you just kind of push it through. Or you can do this. You can just kind of, on the table, push down like that. Da-na-na-na. Instant strength. And you do want to make sure that you are going through all 4 layers of fabric, because if you are not, then that will leave holes in your stitching then the stuffing will fall out, and you do not want the stuffing to fall out. Because that is bad. Alright, so this is the other way to deal with knots. Okay, so I got real freaking mad at that one last knot. I just decided to cut it. Now this is like a last resort. If you like really can't get it at all, you know, just cut it. It's not worth getting mad at. Unfortunately, it is the most wasteful way of doing it, because now, as you can see, this is the thread left attached to the needle. Which is fine. It's an alright amount. But it's definitely not going to be enough to get all the way across there and do. It might be, but it's certainly a lot less likely than if I were to still have this all attached. So, but now, I have this long piece of thread that's doing absolutely nothing. So, I'm going to tie a knot of the two threads here from just the one, and then I'm going to tie a knot on this once it's a little bit further through, like about there. We want to use as much of it as possible, and then we're going to tie them both together. As I'm sure you've guessed, this is not a step that is part of making this Mimikyu plushie. It's just a mistake that I made. Not a mistake, really. It's just more of a thing that happened. So, yeah. Alright, so there I've tied both of them individually. I'm going to tie them together. You just take the two different ones, and obviously just tie them together. Jeez, it was being annoying. Alright, now that all the knots and stupidity are they're done, let's continue, shall we? Now that there's a freaking giant pile of knots in the middle of the thing there, I gotta be careful to avoid it, so I don't accidentally untie any of them, or get tied up in any of them, and blah 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 blah. The joys of sewing. I thought this is probably one of my most animated, well, not animated, but one of the videos that I've been most animated in, and you can't even see my face. I wonder if anyone has ever used face cam while sewing. If not, it's my idea. You can't have it. It's mine. I'll do it one day eventually, if I ever get a second camera. I do have a second camera. We'll see. So yeah, don't even worry about this giant lump of nonsense that's going on here. There is a chance that something might snap in there at some point in time, but you know, you cross the bridge when you get to it, right? For instance, I just went through that knot like 3 times, so I'm basically tying another knot. So why not? Why not tie more knots? It's not like anyone will see them anyways. That is why you always want to do your sewing inside out, so that people can't see all of your mistakes. Just like in real life. Internalize everything, so that nobody knows what a mistake you are. There are no mistakes, just happy accidents. What a happy little cloud over here. Honestly, I think I'm just sort of descending into madness at this point. Anyway, so yeah, that's that. And that is finally that one ear sewn on. And now I'm going to go along here, and then I'll do the second one. I'm not going to show you guys all that, because you already saw it on that one. You don't need to see it on this one. I'll just come back when we're going to be sewing everything else. Alright, so as you can see with this one, I did decide to follow the fabric, this part of the fabric, the yellow part here, just so it looks slightly less derpy than if you were to just go straight across. It's okay if you did go straight across, so did I, clearly. It doesn't matter either way, because really the person you're giving it to probably won't care that much. But yeah, it does just make it look a little bit more professional, I guess. About as professional as I can make it look. Next thing we're going to do is just start down here, sawing all the way up and around here. And like I said before, you can go along the back here instead of trying to sew through both, because again, you don't want to sew through both. You want to be able to stuff the black parts of the ears, which is why we left it open in between. So, and sew along here, same thing there, all the way around down to here. Yes, you do want to start down here, going all the way up and around, so that you can double stitch back if you want to. Because if you start up here, where the needle and thread already is, first of all, you're gonna run out of thread, because that's definitely not enough to go down and back. And secondly, sorry, up here is what I'm talking about. You don't want to start up here, because you'll have to go up and then back, and then back and back, and it's just a mess, okay? You don't need that. You just want to start here clean, go around, and back again to there. There's a reason I'm leaving this stuff on here right now. It's because I'm not entirely sure how far I'll want it to hang out over top of this part. So I'm just being safe and leaving it as it is right now. We'll cut that as needed later. I'll be back once I've done all of that. Christmas Cthulhu, why are you leaving your garbage all over the place? Jeez. Dude's like addicted to those zucchini muffins. Right, so now that all that's done, it's time for the fun part. We get to turn it inside out and see what it's actually going to look like, or get an idea of it rather. Once this is inside out, we're going to actually start working on the face. We can also determine which side we want to be the face, because technically speaking, the ears don't have to be facing the same direction as in the picture. So we could make either side the face. I am going to make it the side that's in the picture, because mine happens to work out that way. So just trying to get the ears to go right side out can be a little bit tricky. Don't pull too hard, just be patient with it. You can sort of, I don't know what you want to call whatever I'm doing right now. You can stick your hand inside like a little glove. No, like a little finger puppet. It's a weird seagull raptor thing. Anyways, yeah, so you don't want to pull too hard or anything, because you don't want to end up with like this kind of thing, which can be fixed, but it's just a bit of a nuisance. It's just defeating the purpose of turning it inside out in the first place. Sometimes, and don't recommend this for anything other than a last resort, but sometimes you can take your scissors, because they're a little bit thinner than the human fingers, you can just kind of shove them in there, just gently push. Anybody see the Trolls movie? It's a pretty good movie. Alright, there we go. Now, see, the ears are a little bit thinner than I would like. This is because, like I said, always want to make sure that your cuts are a little bit bigger than what you want them to be. This is why. Because you're almost always going to sew it smaller or thinner than it needs to be. So, yeah, they are a little bit thinner than what I would like, but it's okay. We can work with this. It doesn't need to be perfect. I'm just going to show you real quick how to fix this thing here, this frayed bit. Basically, you can take a pin, one of these. You could even use your needle, the back side of your needle if you wanted. You're just going to shove it back in on itself, back into the hole. This sometimes happens due to a wide stitch or just on a fluke. Right now, we're going to work on the face. So, as you can see, face is going to go here. And if you look at Mimikyu, you'll see that they have these sort of scribbled on cheeks and eyes. And the mouth is smooth and not looking like it was scribbled on. It looks like it was sort of sewn on. So basically, what you can do for that is either if you have a black and red Sharpie, you can just scribble and swirl those eyes and cheeks on yourself. Or fabric markers. I was going to sew it. Little feet. Right, so here we are now. You may have noticed that head is stuffed a little bit, completely actually. So normally I would save that until later, after the face was done. But because I wanted to get an idea of what the general shape was like so I could position the cheeks and the eyes properly, I decided to stuff it. Also, because I'm going to be using fabric markers, these are just maybe dollar store stuff. You can get them at like Michael's, Curry's, any art store really, any kind of fabric marker. And so you can sew on the eyes and cheeks if you want. I was going to, but this is on a deadline for tomorrow. Haha. Yeah, it's a birthday present. Ironically, not a Christmas present. But so yeah, you can sew them on. It's just you won't want it to be stuffed because sewing with stuffing is sometimes annoying because it can come out as you're sewing. And it will use a fair bit of black and red thread because you'll just be going over the same spots over and over and over again in a swirling motion and scribbling motion. Just remember that if you do decide to sew them on, and I'll show this again when I do the mouth, because I will be sewing on the mouth, you have to start from the inside so that the knot is inside, because you do not want some kind of like really weird knot thing hanging off at the face. If you wanted to, you could also do the actual eyes at the same time. I'm actually going to be cutting holes for those, so I won't draw those on. The only reason for that is because I want it to be more accurate to the actual Mimikyu. So, without further ado, I shall now draw on the eyeballs and the cheeks. Whew, this is real stressful right here. So let me just get my reference picture here. So yes, I am actually doing it exactly how I see it in the picture. Simply because that's just one of my quirks, is I prefer it to look exactly how it does in the picture if I'm drawing it. I'm a person, and that's what I do. Right, there's one eye. That only took me like 5 to 10 minutes. Because I'm such a stickler for perfection. Alright, now for the next eye. I'm trying to get it A, perfectly spaced, and B, perfectly sized. And I realize that that's almost nearly impossible. That's not going to stop me from trying. There we go. Second eyeball. Or fake eyeball, rather. Whew. That was quite the ordeal. Here, hold this for me. Thank you. Next, for the scribbly, cheeky thingies. And it's a good thing I'm actually doing this before the mouth. I almost did the mouth first, which would have been bad, because then I would have to work around it. Seeing as the scribbles go underneath the mouth for some reason. Okay, so... Oh dang. I just realized this marker is running a little bit. Whew. That's annoying when that happens. Oh well. Guess I should just try and press lighter then. Even though I want this nice dark color, sometimes we just can't have nice things. Alright, there's cheek 1. Now for cheek 2. Right, so, there's the face. Yes, it is a little lopsided, as far as I can tell. This is because this cheek should be ever so slightly rotated about here. But, it's not a big deal. It will only haunt me for forever. Just kidding, doesn't matter. I'm just going to quickly cut out the mouth. And you'll be right back. Right, so, got the mouth cut out. It's an alright shape. I mean, it's not exactly the same as in the picture, but it's, I mean, it's close enough. So, I'm gonna sew that on. Boom. Editing magic. No? Okay. Well, I'll be right back when it's done. Like I said, though, when you sew the face on, you're gonna want to go inside here just to start it off, because you don't want knots on the outside. Knots on the outside or back. All right. Oh yeah, almost forgot to mention. You're almost definitely gonna want to pin this down, because if you are like me and you want it in this exact spot, you're not gonna get that if you don't pin it, because otherwise it's gonna move all over the place, and then you'll be like, dang, it moved all over the place. I should have pinned that down. Best places to pin it, probably there, here. And other good place to pin is here. And then it won't move. Da 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 da. Okay, cool. Alright, so there's the mouth all sewn up and everything. Of course, don't forget that when you finish it, you're also going to want to finish it on the inside and tie it in there. Sorry, I keep smashing your head there, buddy. So yeah, that's that part. And now we're gonna actually put the two pieces together. So I was debating before which side should be the front side. And so I think I'm gonna make it this side, which you would think is weird because it's got that seam on it, right? But as far as I can tell from the research that I was doing, it doesn't show up, no matter how tight you pull. So that's where the seam is, and it doesn't show up. So, I'm going to make that the front because it's flatter. I feel like the front of him would be flatter for some reason. So, we're going to do that. As you can see, there's a lot of excess fabric down here. Like I said before, it's going to get cut off and turned into like its little triangular sunshine thingies, whatever you want to call them. What we're going to do for this part, to attach the black beanbag to the yellow thing, I want it to be as seamless as possible, just like Mimikyu's lovely costume that they've made themselves. And so we're going to sew up along this seam and this seam. I don't know if you can see, you know, the seams that we had from before. Into the black part up to obviously where it ends, and then back down, tie it off, do the other side, and then we are going to stuff it up here. Right, so I've done the one side already. This is sewn along the side in here, like so, because I decided that instead of going along the outside, like I said before, that it would be easiest and best for the sake of the thread that's already here to go along the inside along this little flap thing that gets left over from when you sew the other side. You may have also noticed that I cut the holes out already. That's just because I figured it would be easier to do that now when I still have the maneuverability of the fabric. And basically all I did for that was I just stuck my fingers where I wanted the holes to be, found it on this side, and it's like a snowflake. You know when you cut out snowflakes? You fold it in half, and then you just do a half oval-y type of thing, whatever you want to call that shape. So yeah, I'm just going to show you how to do the sewing of the flaps to the side of this thing, to the side of the black fabric thing. So you want to make sure that this piece is lined up properly within here. Before doing either side, first I went over with the circular sewing because I was afraid that if I did the regular sewing on it, that it wouldn't fold back into the same shape when you pull it back out like this. Thankfully, it does, as far as I can tell right now. Yeah, so you can do it circular or the other way. I did a bit of both, and it turned out alright. So what I did for this, though, was I started up at the top. So as you can see, just very simply doing the circular sew here. You may have noticed just now that this is not tied. The reason for that, because I wanted to show you guys that you could do it after your first sew through. You could also just do it here instead of having to do the complicated thing about having to hold four things with your fingers and stuff. So yeah, you can just do the knot here. Sorry I didn't show you that earlier. I don't usually do it this way. That's why I didn't think about it. It's probably a lot easier. But I like to make my life complicated, so I do it the other way. Right, as I was saying, just do a circular motion all the way down the side and then back up. Some of you may notice that I keep going back through my stitches once I dip them around. This is because I keep accidentally making a knot. I'll show you what I mean. I keep doing this. And what's wrong with this is that the needle is over top of this thread. So when I pull it through, it's basically going to make a knot. But if I go like this, it'll just do the normal thing. So yeah, that's how you avoid that. So, as some of you may have noticed, my stitching from before, when I went along the sides, actually goes below the point where I'm sewing to on this part. That's fine. If we end up cutting it off, we'll just retie it. If we don't, then it can stay. And we'll probably just be down the middle of one of the triangle things, if anywhere. So yeah, like I said, that's that, and then I would just go up along again, either in the same circular motion or just a straight stitch, like we've been doing, and just making sure to not go beyond the straight stitch that's already there, because if you do, then it will make the rest of it smaller, and you don't want that. From this point, we're basically done. All we gotta do is stuff the neck, possibly speed sew that to the inside of here after it's been stuffed, so that, you know, no stuffing will come out the front or the back, and then make the tail. And the tail is pretty simple. It's basically this ear, but, you know, brown. So we got the tail here now. So I'm just gonna sew it normal, and then sew it to the back, and that'll be it. I have no idea why I started in the top corner like that. It would make much more sense to start down here on one of these sides. But here we are anyways. I mean, I suppose I could technically unsew everything. Yeah, let's do that. Alright, and that's it. All done. Finally. As you can see, I got the little tail on here and everything. And you might notice I have actually put a claw on there because apparently this is a stick. I'm just going to draw a line on that because there's a line on it. So there we go. Now it's completely done. You have your very own Mimikyu. Right, so that has been how to make your own Mimikyu plushie. I hope that you guys enjoyed it, and that it wasn't too long, and that it was actually helpful. Sorry if it was a little bit tedious or slow for anyone who's not a beginner sewer. This video was aimed more towards beginners or intermediate sort of thing. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for joining me. I know this video is kind of late, but late Christmas presents are sometimes the best ones. Thank you guys for bearing with me this whole time. And I hope you guys have been enjoying this. thank you guys again for watching. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up if you want, and subscribe if you're interested in maybe seeing more of this. Let me know. Again, the comments below. But I hope you guys had a good Christmas or whatever holidays you celebrate, and I hope you all have a Happy New Year. But thank you guys for being there and just, watching. I will see you guys next time. Bye. Christmas Cthulhu. So when I'm tying knots, though, I like to, as you know, do it 3 or 4 times, and it's gonna sound really cheesy and whatever. But I always say, like, if you do it a 5th time, or the 4th and 5th times are, just more love. Because these are always for somebody, and somebody I care about. And yes, love. So definitely want to put love into everything. It just makes things come out better.